Well, you are better than last time, but you still seriously need to lose the Iron Boy Jr. crap already.
Those were up, and they did.
We're smart, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review. And this movie review is going to be for the, so far for now, final review of the Spider-Man review series until this weekend. And it's going to be for the second solo Spider-Man film of the MCU, and the very first, well, of his version set within the MCU. And it's going to be for the, if you can call it an MCU film, it's the first MCU film to be set after Endgame. It was released 3 months after Endgame, or 2.5 months after Endgame, however you want to call it. And has often been described as, well, the epilogue of the Infinity Saga. And that film is going to be for none other than 2019's Spider-Man Far From Home. This is once again directed by John Watts, and the second of the Tom Holland trilogy, and the second solo Spider-Man film of the MCU. Although I don't really call these MCU films, they're just separate things with MCU characters in them. I prefer to call them that, but some may still call them MCU films anyway, but whatever. What's the plot of this one? Well, our friendly neighborhood superhero decides to join his best friends Ned, MJ, and the rest of the gang on a European vacation. However, Peter's plan to leave superheroics behind for a few weeks are quickly scrapped when he begrudgingly agrees to help Nick Fury uncover the mystery of several elemental creature attacks and creating havoc across the continent. So how was this made? Well, it was in June 2016 when Sony Pictures chairman Tom Rothman stated that Sony and Marvel Studios were committed to making future Spider-Man films after Homecoming. The following month, Kevin Feige said if additional films were made, the company would have an early idea to follow the model of the Harry Potter film series and would have the plot of each film cover a new school year. And a second film intended to take place during Peter's junior high of high school, but by October discussions begun for a second film, including which villain would be featured, and according to Spider-Man actor Tom Holland, who signed on for 2 more Spider-Man films after Homecoming. In December, after the successful release of the first Homecoming trailer, Sony slated a sequel to the film for July 5, 2019, before Homecoming had even been released into theaters. Sony's insistence that the sequel be released in 2018 complicated Marvel's presence for secrecy regarding their plans for Spider-Man in this film and their other MCU films, since the character would die temporarily at the end of Avengers Infinity War, and would not be resurrected before Avengers Endgame in April 2019, in which time marketing for this film would have already begun. So in a way, the trailer's already, these Far From Home teaser already spoiled his revival. And after being able to include Iron Man for Homecoming, Sony revealed in June 2017 that to have the use of another Marvel Studios controlled character for the sequel. Feige stated that Marvel and Sony were just starting to solidify their plans for the film and felt Spider-Man's appearances in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame would launch him off into a very new cinematic universe at that point. Similar to how Cap's Civil War informed everything in Homecoming, Marvel and Sony both wanted Homecoming director John Watts returning for the sequel, because Feige stated that that was the intention all along, and Watts said he had signed on for another Spider-Man film. If Feige stated a sequel would have a subtitle like Homecoming, it would not feature 2 in the title. And he added that filming was going to begin in April or May 2018. As with Homecoming, Feige stated the film's film would be one that had not yet been seen in any Spider-Man movie. And by July, Watts is in negotiations with the studios regarding his return for the sequel, and Marissa Tomei even expressed interest in returning as Aunt May from the previous films. And that, of course, did end up happening. We all know that. And You're wondering how long does this take place after Avengers Endgame? This film apparently is actually set 8 months after the conclusion of Avengers Endgame, so in a way, this film's technically set in this and No Way Home are both set in 2024. Summer 2024. Well, the first scene of No Way Home is also set in summer 2024. I'm pretty sure the rest takes place like months, several months. The rest of the movie just takes place apart within months. The Watts felt dealing with many of the unanswered questions from Endgame posted a fun creative challenge for the Far From Home team, and they look to make a movie that's in the world and deals with those stories but also still a fun Spider-Man movie. Like for example, Ned, MJ, and Flash all turned to dust during the events of Infinity War, which is revealed along with Parker, while some of his classmates did not, and they're now 5 years older due to the events of Endgame. The Watts compared the dynamic to the film Flight of the Navigator, and calling the situation that was weird, but also something they could have a lot of fun with. So yeah, after the film was shot and marketed, Spider-Man Far From Home premiered at the TCL Chinese Theater on June 26, 2019, and was theatrically released to the United States in the theaters on July 2, 2019, as the final film in Phase 3 of the MCU. And of course, apparently the epilogue film of the whole Infinity Saga as a whole. When it came to the critical reactions, once again, like Homecoming got, the film received positive reviews with praise for its humor, action sequences, visuals, and the performances of Holland and Gyllenhaal. It grossed, and at the box office, it made more than Homecoming by grossing over $1.1 billion worldwide, and it made it the first Spider-Man film to pass the $1 billion mark, the fourth highest grossing film of 2019, and Sony's highest grossing film, and the 24th highest grossing film of all time. Well, it was Sony's highest grossing film of all time anyways until Spider-Man No Way Home came out, which would go on to be released in December 2021. And I already reviewed that movie, guys, so we're not reviewing it again. Because why would I need to re-review it if I've already reviewed it? You can go check that review out if you want to know my thoughts on it. And they'd still obviously be the same. Now, as for my reaction to Far From Home, well, I did used to give this like an 8 out of 10. I did used to really love this movie when I first saw it. But now, looking back at it, it's honestly just okay at best. I mean, like I found Homecoming okay, but I always keep disliking it and disliking it more as I rewatch it. This one did kind of go down on rewatches, but it's definitely not one of the worst Spider-Man movies. It's far from that. It's definitely an improvement over Homecoming, which I still think is personally the worst Spider-Man movie. This one doesn't nearly have some of the same problems Homecoming did, but it still has some of the same problems, but there's just way less than last time. And this is the closing chapter to MCU's Phase 3 and the epilogue chapter to the Infinity Saga as a whole. Spider-Man Far From Home decently does end the arc of Tony Stark in the initial trilogy of MCU phases. And it was a blend of paying respects to the past and building and looking into the future of the MCU. The bad future of the MCU anyways, had we all known that. All packed into the charming Spider-Man movie filled with fun and excitement. And also, much like Homecoming, this also introduced us to a villain we never saw in a movie before, Mysterio. Homecoming introduced us to Vulture, and he was one of the best things of Homecoming. And now we get to be introduced to Mysterio, who was actually played brilliantly by Jake Gyllenhaal. And honestly, I thought he was definitely one of the best MCU villains, and definitely one of the best Mysterio portrayals. And it made Spider-Man one of the strongest franchises in terms of its rogue gallery and cinematic form, like with Vulture and Mysterio being some of the few interesting complex villains in MCU history. Far From Home was a great palate cleanser. This film's definitely an improvement over Homecoming, because I think the director actually seems like he must have saw the criticisms Homecoming got and decided to improve the story and make flowing action sequences that are much more appealing and exhilarating. And special effects and CGI are exceptional, and especially compared to Homecoming's somewhat spotty CGI. And in this movie, Michelle Jones, or MJ, I'd rather call her Michelle Jones, guys. is definitely an improved character here, and having her as a love interest this time makes a little more sense than before, because in Homecoming, I didn't like the character at all. She was just a bit bland and just felt rushed, and in fact, she was not even needed for Homecoming at all. Well, because the focus was literally more on Liz Allen, and just basically, Liz was just there just to set up the twist of Adrian being her father. She didn't really serve much, and the relationship turned out to be there. And Peter's crush on her turned out to be useless after all, because she ends up leaving the school at the end of the movie. And they don't even mention her again. Just like as if she never existed. Like, they should have only saved Michelle Jones for the ending scene of Homecoming during the, like, little decathlon new member announcements. Like, they could have just saved her as a cameo for that. That should have been her only scene in Homecoming. But surprisingly enough, the centerpiece of this film is not the superhero's extraordinary world-saving, but the budding romance between the very ordinary human characters. It might be more accurate to describe the film as a genre fusion of rom-com and action comedy under the disguise of a superhero movie, since the scale of the world-saving and the stakes for the final showdown are very much limited compared to what just happened in Endgame, which was kind of the whole point. And surprisingly here, I did like Zendaya's improved performance as Michelle Jones, and it finally breaks kind of the stereotype of superheroes' love interest. Instead of like your typical background eye candy, Michelle Jones in this one is a little more intelligent, a little more interesting here, and much more likable. In this one, and of course we all know, Far From Home picks up Marvel's business literally 8 months after the ending of Endgame. The figure of Iron Man looms large in this story despite the character's demise, with much time spent on Peter dealing with the loss of Tony Stark, coupled with how Tony seemed to identify Peter as his natural successor in the role of Planet Guardian. The film itself is even plotted around Peter and his friends taking a short whistle stop tour of Europe, which coincides with dangers presented by a group of monsters called the Elementals, and the introduction of the character of Mysterio, and anything familiar to Spider-Man comic book readers. And there are several parts of the film which work really well. Primarily, like, this involves the character of Mysterio. The key to this is, again, casting with Gyllenhaal being fantastic in the part. The trailers made much of his heroic side, or his fake heroic side anyways, but comic book readers will know how the story pans out, and this change of emphasis as the midpoint shows how good of an actor he is. His moves are even very nicely linked to the previous films in the Marvel canon, with several callbacks to scenes from Iron Man and Civil War, which shows how much attention Marvel pays to their product. Their performances were on the whole fine, with Holland growing to the role as the film progresses. The older actors in the cast do much with relatively short screen time, though less time spent with the two accompanying teachers would have been preferable, as their comedic performances kind of grated on me. Because I wish we just saw less of the two annoying teachers. I thought their characters were just really annoying here, and just thrown in just to be comic reliefs, and don't contribute much to the story. And some of the scenes with the younger actors strayed a little for me, but I suspect it's kind of the whole point of the whole film, and sometimes they do remind me of John Hughes films of the 80s, which I do wish didn't happen. And because I really wish they would just try to leave John Hughes' tones alone for movies, and just let his work rest in peace with him. And when it comes to Peter Parker as a character, you all know, I did not like his character in Homecoming. I thought he just felt way too much like a prick here, because he's basically ditching his classes all the time, constantly begging to be in an Avengers program. You know, he's got to earn that. Got to be responsible enough to earn it. He literally keeps losing and ditching his things, and losing them because he puts them in poor spots. Gets himself trapped in a warehouse, hacks a suit behind Tony's back so he won't get tracked. And of course, when he does get reprimanded by Tony Stark for his carelessness and gets his suit taken away, he gets all upset about losing his suit, believing he's nothing without it, which is not something Spider-Man would say, because Spider-Man doesn't need a suit just to be Spider-Man. There's lots of times when he literally saved and did heroic things without his suits in the other films. But here, he's now better improved as a character. And he actually also deals with the problems of his superhero identity as Spider-Man. And because Peter's trying to take a vacation from his superhero work, The film does start off as a romantic comedy, and I like here how Peter just wants to take a break from being Spider-Man and just enjoy his trip, especially considering how the hell he went through in Infinity War and Endgame, nearly getting snapped away by Thanos, and then coming back to literally witness Tony dying in front of his eyes. For about 5 years later, right here. So it makes sense why Peter wouldn't want to bring a spider suit on his trip, but Aunt May packs his suit anyways, and there's a nice little funny moment at the airport check where the woman's checking his suitcase and she sees the Spider-Man suit, and at first it seems like she'll have him arrested or take the Spider-Man suit away, but it turns out she's actually, the thing she's taken away is this banana and doesn't really seem to care about the suit at all. So that was kind of a funny moment right there. But apart from some action in the beginning, the real action doesn't really start till the middle of the film when Spider-Man meets Mysterio. And the structure of the film gives smaller characters a little more chance to come out better in the film, and a little work also can even be done on the relationship between Peter and Michelle Jones. Like, for example, they've been able to properly divide the roles of Peter Parker and Spider-Man in this film a little more done well. And because, well, this is an MCU film, the film was again filled with many comedic moments, and especially in the beginning where they choose to make too little use of the comedy. Many of the extra characters, like the teachers who went with the students, create smaller calm moments, but unfortunately do not always appeal to the audience because they don't contribute anything to the plot at all. They're just useless characters just thrown in to put in comedic moments. Here, like if you're going to put teachers in this film, those two teachers could have contributed more to the plot, not just been the comic reliefs who don't basically do much. And the effects in the film also look good. And the elemental creatures that Spider-Man and Mysterio are fake fighting against appear beautiful and incredible, and they also make good use of the different European locations where the story takes place. And the acting work is also done well. Like Tom Holland portrays the characters of Peter Parker and Spider-Man definitely much better in this film. He definitely knows how to play well with the emotion of these characters, and especially after the events of Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. And together with Zendaya, they even have both good chemistry together. And they set up a relationship in a realistic manner, as can be kind of the case with most teenagers. Jake Gyllenhaal even performs very well Mysterio and Quentin Beck. And it's special nice to actually see Mysterio in a movie. And it's nice to see, and it's ironic, like, originally Jake Gyllenhaal was going to replace Tobey Maguire after Tobey had a little injury during when he was filming a movie called Sea Biscuit. So it's a nice little nod to that whole little moments that what was originally going to happen when they were making Spider-Man 2 2004. And I will admit, even though this is not the real version of Nick Fury, I thought Peter's chemistry with Nick Fury was definitely also pretty perfect, as was his chemistry with, well, is not actually real in the end, chemistry with Mysterio, because even though their little partnership turns out to not actually be a thing, I like the idea of a Spider-Man movie. I still thought Spider-Man and Mysterio's chemistry was perfect. Even before the twist happened, I thought they had some pretty good chemistry-like partnership and some good little enemy chemistry once it's revealed that Mysterio's the bad guy. And also, another good thing that does work, this movie actually changes locations. Because I like the idea of a Spider-Man movie actually being set all around Europe instead of being set at just New York for a change, which is a refreshing change of location. It's always nice to often change things up every once in a while instead of just repeating the same location and same area all the time. So it was nice to see Spider-Man go to a different location that wasn't New York. Definitely very refreshing right there. And with Ned, I actually also like how Ned was way less... they toned down Ned's comedy in this film because while he was one of the only few likable characters in Homecoming, I really could not stand his comedy moments in Homecoming at all. Here. And of course, Flash Thompson, still annoying in this movie, but not nearly as much compared to how he was in Homecoming this time around too. And he doesn't really have much screen time in this film either, so that is a plus. And there was actually one moment where I did feel, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I did get some slight sympathy for this version of Flash. It was at the very end where they get back from Europe, they're meeting up with their parents, and Flash the one that's there to pick up Flash is his butler. And he's like, did mom couldn't make it? Like, that did kind of get me maybe a minor bit of sympathy there because it's kind of, it could be kind of hinted there his parents don't really seem to pay too much attention to him and seem to kind of neglect him and don't really seem to want to pick up their kid in the airport. So still don't like this version of Flash, but that did kind of get a little bit of sympathy for me right there. And he's actually not nearly as bit of a jerk this time around. So he still has some much better moments here. But I still prefer the jerk jock version of Flash. And I also do really love the finale of this movie where pretty much after Parker fights off all those hallucinations that are done by Beck, after Parker kind of foolishly gives Beck the glasses, and the twist happens where it's revealed that Beck was actually a former employee of Tony Stark, that Tony fired because he felt like his creation could change the world, and we even see a cameo from that one scientist from the first Iron Man movie, actually make a return here. That's actually aiding Beck ever since he got kicked off like as one of Stark's employees, and several of Stark's employees were fired and now want revenge on Tony for firing them after he got back from that cave to create their own version, and so that Beck can be the newest hero of the world. And after he's left for dead by Beck, Parker then contacts Hogan and they have a conversation how Peter knows he's not Tony, and Hogan tells me he's not. Like, even Tony couldn't live up to his own expectations. And it was a nice moment right there. It was a nice moment between the two. There, and it was perfect. And then he flies him to London, and one scene did kind of annoy me. And when Hogan turns on Back in Black from AC/DC, is that callback to the first Iron Man film. Parker mistakes it for a different artist. Where it's like, yeah, I love Led Zeppelin. Like, it's not Led Zeppelin, it's AC/DC. Like, come on. But then, of course, Hogan flies him to London where his classmates are. And Beck, of course, then uses the Edith glasses to orchestrate this fusion of all the elementals as a cover to kill Parker's friends, but Parker's able to disrupt the illusions and Beck attacks him with the drones. Parker then regains control of Edith and defeats Beck, was hit by this misfired gunshot from one of the drones, but before he dies, Beck tells one of his associates to retrieve data from the drones. I wonder what that was leading up to. And then, of course, Parker returns to New York City, and he begins a relationship with Michelle Jones, and they beautifully swing into the city as their first dates, and it seems like everything ends perfectly there. And it wraps up perfectly there, it seems like it, until the credits. Sadly, not everything could stay happy for long, because once their date ends, Parker ends up seeing footage that gets broadcasted by J. Jonah Jameson, played once again by, believe it or not, J.K. Simmons. Yes, guys, really loved they got J.K. Simmons back to play J. Jonah Jameson again, because I don't think anyone else other than J.K. Simmons could ever play J. Jonah Jameson perfectly. Only J.K. Simmons can do it right in the films. Only J.K. Simmons. If you just got anybody else, it wouldn't matter, and I don't think it would be nearly as enjoyable. So I'm glad they got J.K. Simmons back, even though this is a different version of him. So yeah, J. Jonah Jameson of the Daily Bugle Net broadcast docker footage of the London incident. Where it's told all differently, where Beck's pretty much framing Spider-Man for the drone attack and his death. Not just that, to make matters worse, he not only frames Spider-Man, but he also exposes Spider-Man's secret identity to the world, which to Parker's shock, and it literally ends with him saying, "What the f?" And and the credits continue rolling there. I remember when I first saw that in theaters, I had my jaw dropped, speechless. And I could not wait for the third film to come out, but of course, we all know Spider-Man was also almost kicked out of the MCU by Disney. Right there, and then, of course, I didn't want to regard this film as canon during that original time, and refused to buy it on DVD because I knew this film was just going to be, this whole cliffhanger was going to almost be pointless. This was going to face another Amazing Spider-Man 2 fate. However, one time on my way to work at a Dollarama, I heard the Spider-Man theme play on the radio at the Dollarama, and it was actually them announcing that Spider-Man was finally back in the MCU again, and they finally managed to make a deal mainly because Tom Holland was the reason they managed to find a way to still keep Spider-Man in the MCU, so I accepted this film as canon again, and then I went and bought it on DVD. So, glad this did not meet another Amazing Spider-Man fate, because it was just going to make the further ending of Endgame pointless had that happened. And this cliffhanger was never going to get resolved. So yeah, not only that, guys, but that cliffhanger also perfectly sets up the events of No Way Home, as No Way Home literally begins right at that ending scene. But there's a difference, though. I feel like this mid-credit scene should have actually just been the ending of the film and not the mid-credit scene. Because when people leave the theater when the credits start rolling and they miss this scene, and then go see No Way Home or watch No Way Home, they're going to be like, did we miss something? Why the heck is it randomly starting with this? We didn't see this at the end of Far From Home. So that kind of lies a bit of a problem. So that's why this scene should have been the very ending scene, not the mid-credit scene. In fact, I don't think this movie should have had a mid-credit scene. It had that went through. But now, though, and another thing about Ned, and I also like that him and Betty Brant do have a bit of a temporary relationship here, and they do have some good scenes together. And then it's like revealed that they broke up at the end, but it was nice to see their two scenes together. But now, though, we get to the bad qualities, and these are the reasons why this is still a pretty weak movie. First off, the obvious. We still have the Iron Boy Jr. crap in this movie throughout, and it still doesn't feel like a Spider-Man film. At all. Thankfully, there's no Karen, like, little Karen voicing in the suit, thank God. Because that really annoyed me. But there's still some of the same Iron Boy Jr. crap here. Another reason why this film just doesn't live up to the other ones is because all Spider-Man really faces in this movie is the main villain and a bunch of drones. Literally, most of the enemies in this one are the drones. And the plot twist. Now, loves Mysterio as a villain, guys, but I already saw Mysterio being the antagonist long coming. So it wasn't a shock when it was revealed he was evil. Because Mysterio's always a Spider-Man villain. How is this even shocking? That he's evil. Like, come on, guys. We all knew that was coming. It's not a shock. They even did the same mistake with this one that was done with Iron Man 3, where they set up a scenario and a villain only to later show it all be fake and replace the scenario with a generic run-of-the-mill villain. Not that the original scenario was that good either, but promising people escapism and then replacing with the real-world things in a comic movie just takes all the power away. And Spider-Man uses his spider senses to tell that everything is fake in the end, despite somehow forgetting that he has his power for 99% of the rest of the movie. Is also a confusing plot hole. And I also don't like how the beginning starts. It's during the Marvel logo. Whitney Houston's I'll Always Love You was a bad choice, because it just makes the viewer feel like they're not watching a Spider-Man movie, and they're actually randomly watching some romantic drama. But then you find out the song was literally the part of a memorial video made for the Avengers who died in Endgame, which were Black Widow, Tony, and maybe off-screen Cap, who probably died of old age. And also Vision, who died in Infinity War, is even included in the memorial video. But that song's look, rest in peace, Whitney Houston. I'll Always Love You's a good song, but I don't think it really should have been the start of the movie. And I also hate the other post-credit scene where Fury and Hell are apparently not their actual selves. Apparently all along, it was the Skrulls, Talos and Soren in disguise from Captain Marvel. Yeah, from the worst Infinity Saga movie. Great, we gotta have those characters in disguise. And they were under orders from the real Fury, who was literally away commanding a Skrull spaceship the whole time. So, Basically, you have made this whole movie fucking pointless. It never, cause like, they don't even acknowledge this to get in No Way Home anyways, so what was even the point of this scene at all? Other than to set up that Secret Invasion series that I'm not gonna watch. Like, literally a lot of plot holes don't even get acknowledged again. So what was the point of this scene to begin with? And finally, there was a character I very much disliked so much in this movie, and that was Brad Davis. Oh my god. Brad Davis was just so annoying to watch, specifically when he literally keeps trying to hit on Michelle Jones, even though it's clear Michelle Jones doesn't even like him to begin with. It's even clear about that. And then he practically spies on Parker in the bathroom just so he can ruin his chances of being with Michelle Jones and stuff, but at least he does get reprimanded by one of the teachers for the whole bathroom incident. That's kind of his only comeuppance he gets. I feel like, yeah, that's not really that satisfying of a comeuppance if you ask me. With that being said though, Far From Home ain't great, but it's an okay improvement. In the end, I would just stream Far From Home online, as it just ain't too memorable of a Spider-Man movie. And that's just it. It's just an okay movie that's just worth streaming. Anyways, that's it for my review of Far From Home. You're wondering how I'm going to rank Far From Home? Here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you were unhappy with Spider-Man Homecoming and want to see an improved film after that train wreck, then I would just recommend streaming this one online for your own sake. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Spider-Man Far From Home, I am going to give Spider-Man Far From Home a 6.5 out of 10. There we go. That wraps up my review for Spider-Man Far From Home. And with that, guys, that officially wraps up the Spider-Man review series. Until Across the Spider-Verse comes out, all the Spider-Man rewatches are done. Now, we can move on to the Shrek rewatches and the Indiana Jones rewatches. Yeah, so not gonna re-review No Way Home because I've already watched that. I've already reviewed that. I don't need to talk about it again, and my score is still the same. Let There Be Carnage I don't need to rewatch because I've already reviewed that. And Morbius I've thankfully reviewed, and I thankfully don't have to talk about or ever rewatch that piece of shit. I will never rewatch that piece of shit Morbius again in my life. Ever. So please do not ask me to rewatch that. I don't ever want to see that movie again. It's Morbid time. Ugh. Until then, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.